Today's win was more special because it happened on our home course.
Yeah, our hood. Lou Ragoose was in the crowd with the fans to talk about the experience this week at the Ryder Cup.
America was ready.
Oh my God.
Nice.
To take back the cup.
Right.
Just feel the energy, the electricity, the crowd, and it's been unbelievable. And it was right in our own backyard.
After losing 3 straight Ryder Cup competitions, the U.S. team played so well this year that when they clinched it, not every fan realized right away what had happened.
Dude, get off your fantasy list, man. We just won.
Amazing.
You boys played us off the park, and you did great. And it's just a pleasure being here in the sunshine with all of our new American friends.
Someone had warned these Brits that Minnesota can be cold in October.
I brought weatherproofs, I brought thermal.
But on the closing day of the 41st Ryder Cup at Hazeltine National Golf Club in Chaska, the weather ended up a top highlight.
Couldn't have been a better day for Minnesota this time of year.
And this was a bucket lister from my brother and I, so the fact that we won is icing on the cake.
But we're so excited. We may be going to France in 2 years.
A lot of fans showed their national pride.
Yeah! Whoa! My oldest son, he told him about it, and he said, I'm adopted. So
While a handful were ejected for their behavior on the
I'm
course.
glad they threw a few of them out because that's great. They kind of ruined the experience for others.
In the end, if fans from the losing side seem to be having this much fun,
Great job.
Minnesota must have done all right.
God bless America.
There you go.
Well done.
In Chaska, Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
USA! USA! USA!
Thousands of striking nurses are voting on a new contract offer from Allina. The union is not telling members how to vote. We're hearing from some of them tonight. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live in Minneapolis with their thoughts. Lou?
Julie, there is a small number of picketers tonight outside Abbott Northwestern Hospital as the voting is ongoing. If the nurses are to pass that contract and go back to work, it would take a majority vote, and that would be a very silent majority, as a yes vote right now is an unpopular one within the union.
Do you want to come and vote?
If they vote yes to accept a proposed 3-year contract with Allina, 4,000 striking Twin Cities nurses could go back to work as early as this week. But those who are vocal about their vote are those who voted no.
I think what they're offering just doesn't have enough of what we want yet.
There were some small gains for the nurses, but there were a lot of take-backs.
According to the Minnesota Nurses Union negotiating team, the latest Allina proposal gives small concessions for safety improvements, staffing, and health care. But Allina refused to budge on its position of moving nurses from a union-controlled health plan to its corporate plan. That was the key reason so many supported striking in the first place.
We pretty much just had the same contract being proposed over and over again with slight tweaks.
They haven't been fair in their negotiations. They haven't been negotiating until just this past negotiations.
Do you want to vote?
No one who voted in favor of the contract wanted to talk about their vote on camera. It is the unpopular position within the union. But there are nurses financially struggling because of the strike who need their paycheck again. That's why this time the union didn't tell the nurses how to vote.
The negotiating team felt we wanted to bring it to the nurses and let them decide. We want them to make the best decision based off their family, their current situation.
And the voting will end at 9 o'clock tonight. The union expects the votes to be counted by 10:30 or 11. And if they vote down this proposed contract, the strike out here will continue. Julie.
All right. Thank you, Lou.
Some of the fans who bought tickets will be accommodated. Lou Ragoose is here with more details on all of that. Lou?
Yeah, Randy and Julie, it took a temporary permit issued by the city of Chanhassen for Paisley Park to move forward with 3 of those tours, one on Thursday, one on Saturday, and then one on Friday of next week, all because Paisley Park sold tickets through the end of the year before the city council approved it. Paisley Park's big public opening on Thursday.
We got VIP, we did all the upgrades for the tastings, the bags, the work.
Was a $3,500 vacation across the pond Orla Kavanagh from Ireland was really looking forward to.
We kind of just scraped every little bit we could together. We worked nights, we worked everything, and we're just devastated.
Devastated after learning from Paisley Park managers via email what happened at Monday night's Chanhassen City Council meeting.
I have a valid motion to table the rezoning.
In a move clearly surprising to the Prince estate, the City Council decided it needs more time before approving rezoning Prince's former home as a museum.
The blame lies with the management group. They sold the tickets.
Councilmember Jerry McDonald says Paisley Park managers came unprepared and without answers to traffic and pedestrian safety concerns. And he says Prince's Trust knew full well it was risky to sell tickets for tours without approval.
The city had nothing to do with selling those tickets. We made it clear up front that, this was not a done deal. It was not just going to be rubber stamped because it was the Prince Museum. And if they wanted to sell tickets, they did so at their own risk, and they understood that.
Mayor Denny Laufenberger was the only one ready to pass the rezoning Monday night.
It's just unclear to me what additional time will give us.
Despite his frustration and sympathy for Prince fans,
truthfully, I do feel sorry for them.
He too points out Prince's Trust knew this was a possibility. Now, Paisley Park is going to try to squeeze in everyone who has tickets through October 15th into these 3 scheduled tours. Anyone who has tickets after that, well, Paisley Park might need to apply for more temporary permits. The City Council will talk about this issue again next Wednesday of next week, but they might not vote on it until December 20th. Guys?
Developing today, word several Minnesotans are under arrest in a global sex trafficking sting, all part of a bust that spanned Minnesota, California, Illinois, Georgia, and Hawaii. An operation allegedly run out of Thailand. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is here with what we're learning tonight. Lou?
Randy, the suspects include 13 women and 4 men. 4 of the suspects were living in Minnesota. The U.S. Attorney calls this a highly sophisticated sex trafficking scheme.
In short, the victims in this case lived as modern-day slaves.
U.S. Attorney Andrew Luger, in announcing an international sex trafficking bust, wants everyone to know the scale of the operation that affected many, many victims.
We've identified hundreds, but quite frankly, that number could very well grow.
According to the indictment, women were flown to the U.S. from Thailand, then moved to various cities, including Minneapolis. They were then kept at houses of prostitution, including several hotels close to the airport, where Luger says the promise of the American dream turned into a nightmare.
The victims were forced to have sex with strangers for many hours every day, even if the men were abusive.
This is one of the Minnesotans arrested, labeled as a facilitator. According to the indictment, she began as a victim, then rose within the organization to help traffic other women. Luger says facilitators help advertise the women on websites like Backpages.com. A Minnesota man was also charged, labeled a runner, in charge of escorting the victims anytime they left the house of prostitution.
The runners were typically men and were often paid, at least in part, in having sex with the victims.
Luger says although this bust is significant, the investigation isn't over.
Luger says several victims have escaped, which presumably helped start this investigation right here in the Twin Cities. All of the suspects will stand trial here as well. 2 of the Minnesotans indicted have yet to be caught. Randy?
All right. Thanks, Lou.
Now to our other top story. Firefighters are on the scene of a 3-alarm fire at a historic apartment complex in Minneapolis. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live downtown with the very latest. Lou?
Well, Camille, first and foremost, no one was hurt. Everyone made it out safely, although a lot of people lost their belongings in this fire at the 12-unit building. I'll show you what's going on right now. Firefighters are still on scene, although they have the fire put out. They're just making a secondary sweep of the building just to double check that there were no victims. Now, when they arrived on scene, there were already flames shooting out of windows and the roof. No word yet how the fire started, but people living in the unit where it started weren't home at the time. A lot of Vikings fans parked in the lot next to the building, and some received car damage from the debris falling onto their vehicles. The Oakland Apartments, it's a very old building, built in 1888, according to the Preservation Society of Minnesota. It almost looks out of place here next to all the skyscrapers around, including the Campbell-Methune Tower right across the street. There are 12 units inside the building. Residents say it was a great place to live, inexpensive, and close to work for most of them. We happened to talk to a man who often stayed in the apartment where the fire started, just as he got back from work and saw what happened.
All the traffic from the game, I just happened to come drive down the street, and I got like maybe a block away and saw the fire truck ladder, and it's just like the worst fear is just to come and see this.
And again, no one was hurt, although I was told that one person lost their pet. Their cat died in the fire. Although it's not official yet, they put so much water on the building to put out this fire that it's hard to imagine that this building will be able to be used again. We'll have much more coming up tonight at 10.
All right, Lou, and it's a good thing with all the people that are out there for the game, no one else was hurt. Thanks, Lou. Well, turning tonight, 18 people are without a home. The Red Cross has found them a place to stay after a fire at Oakland Apartments in downtown Minneapolis. The 127-year-old building is destroyed, but as KARE 11's Lou Goose tells us, no one was hurt.
Situated in the shadows of the tallest buildings in downtown Minneapolis. Not many knew of the 3-story Oakland Apartments beyond the 12 families who live there.
It's a great location.
And Vikings fans who park in its lot on game day.
Great.
But this Sunday afternoon fire gave the 127-year-old building a headline that may have spelled its end.
They had a good head start on us when they got here.
I don't even know what to think right now.
Greg Davis was about to help his girlfriend move out of the 3rd-floor corner apartment. Neither of them was home when the fire started in that unit.
All the traffic from the game, I just happened to come drive down the street, and I got like maybe a block away and saw the fire truck ladder, and it's just like the worst fear is just to come and see this.
Minneapolis firefighters had to dump a lot of water on top of the red limestone and brick building to put out the flames, sending debris onto the cars below.
Someone in front of me, they said, "Oh, there's a fire downtown," and I go, "Oh my gosh, the building looks like right where we parked." Nah. Yeah, it was.
Everyone made it out of the Oakland Apartments safely, but the historic downtown building, overshadowed by its neighbors, may now be history. Lou Goose, KARE 11 News.
Randy, it sounds like officers knew very little about the man they were chasing. They didn't know his name, just that he was involved in a minor hit-and-run crash and wouldn't pull over.
It was a fiery crash in Burnsville that took the life of a hit-and-run driver who refused to stop and an innocent mother of 5 who just unfortunately got in his way.
This driver demonstrated complete disregard for the safety of others.
Apple Valley Police Chief John Rickskill's officers chased the driver for 8 miles at high speeds after he says the suspect was driving aggressively and wouldn't pull over after a minor hit-and-run crash in Savage. According to Apple Valley Police policy, there are standards to consider when chasing a suspect, including, is the need to immediately catch the suspect more important than the risk created by the pursuit? And do the dangers created by the pursuit exceed the danger posed by allowing the suspect to escape? Rickskill says he believes his officers followed policy and doesn't know if holding back on the chase would have prevented the crash.
I can't offer an opinion on that right now. We're going to be taking a comprehensive look on this entire situation.
Meantime, the family of Leticia Ocampo is grieving.
Yeah, she's a great person, man. She's a good mother. Right now, man, no, family is really bad.
Ocampo's cousin says she was a mother of 5 who immigrated to Minnesota from Honduras. According to State Patrol, the blame for her death lies with the man who hit her.
Make no mistake, this pursuit was avoidable, and this double fatality crash was avoidable. All it took was for the driver of that Chevy van to stop.
The name of the suspect driver hasn't been released yet. We're also waiting to hear exactly how fast everyone was driving during the chase. It also sounds like the officers didn't actually witness the crash because they were pretty far behind when it happened. Randy.
All right, thanks, Lou. The creepy clown craze has been causing chaos all over the country, including here in Minnesota, and now the craze has cost a St. Francis coach his job. Ben Hildry says he was let go after taking part in a tradition at the end of the soccer season.
And tonight, some of his players went to the school board to try to set the record straight. Our Lou Goose was there and joins us live from St. Francis. Lou?
Julie, Randy, they came here to voice support and to tell board members that a picture of Hildry shared on Twitter of him wearing a scary clown mask was nothing more than an innocent joke.
They made memories.
A bucket full of praise from Ben Hildry's freshman basketball team last year.
We all love you for everything extra that you do.
Sums up why he's so dedicated to coaching.
It was a lot of fun coaching them last year, and I'm going to miss that this year.
Coaching St. Francis girls soccer and basketball is a passion that was taken from him with the snap of a picture on the last day of freshman soccer practice.
It's blown out of proportion in my eyes.
Hildry says it's his tradition at the end of every season to have fun, hit piñatas, and dress up in a costume. This year, he picked the wrong costume. a creepy clown.
It was nothing malicious.
Hildry says he wasn't aware of the so-called creepy clown craze, but his players were, and tweeted this as a joke. Were you trying to scare the community that there was a real clown sighting here at St. Francis?
Definitely not.
The next day, Hildry received a letter from the superintendent stating he'll no longer be coaching.
Getting taken away from basketball coming up, you know, it was like taking me from my family.
I didn't intend for that to happen.
Isn't this an overreaction?
I'd say that the safety and security of kids is not an overreaction.
The superintendent says in the days leading up to this incident, he heard from teachers at the elementary school and middle school that several kids were very afraid of these reports of scary clowns around the country. He says this was poor timing and very poor judgment.
And they're just very, very afraid of it.
Several of Hildry's players and their parents spoke to the school board on his behalf.
It was just so quick to fire somebody who's helped so many girls. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I didn't have Ben. He just got thrown under the bus.
It might not make a difference, but Hildry hopes he gets a second chance.
And it's like, this is my life, and it just, you know, it gets me here, you know.
The school board didn't make any sort of decision after hearing from the kids tonight. Hildry is an unpaid volunteer coach, and he's not a teacher. The superintendent says he's open to the idea of Hildry coming back next season, but as of right now, Hildry will not be coaching basketball this winter. Back to you.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
Lou.
We know the likely source of that Legionnaires outbreak at Hopkins. We're hearing from one of the victims who survived.
Overall, 23 people got sick, 17 were sent to the hospital, and one of them died. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is here with our top story. Lou?
Julie, Randy, health officials say the source of the outbreak was the cooling towers at Citrus Systems, a juice manufacturer in Hopkins. But the reason is still sort of a mystery because according to the health department, they weren't negligent and actually did a good job maintaining those cooling systems.
First time I've ever been sick, so I was kind of blindsided.
Joe Butler was on a ventilator inside North Memorial Hospital fighting Legionnaire's disease when we shared his story less than 4 weeks ago.
I just woke up and they're like, yeah, you almost died. And I was like, what?
Now, health department officials have traced the source of the outbreak that affected Joe and 22 others to cooling towers at Citrus Systems. It's a juice manufacturer in Hopkins, located a couple blocks from where Joe works. Although no Citrus System employees were infected, Joe and 22 others who live or work nearby apparently breathed in contaminated aerosol.
A cooling tower uses falling water as an evaporative process to cool, and you can get this misting off that cooling tower that might contain the bacteria, and if you breathe into your lung, you become infected.
Just driving around here, I would assume, because I don't have AC or anything, so I just drive around with my windows open. So I must have drove in the wrong spot at the wrong time.
The health department gathered a water sample 2 weeks ago, and Citrus Systems cleaned and disinfected its cooling towers that same day. So health officials don't expect to hear of any more infections from this outbreak.
For all intents and purposes, the outbreak ended on September 27th when we were there and had it remediated.
But with 1 death and 17 people hospitalized, the outbreak had very serious results.
I'm relieved, definitely, because I've never almost died before. That's new to me, but I'm glad they found it so that they can fix it.
A Citrus Systems representative said via email that they're fully cooperating with the health department, and that'll include testing the water in their cooling towers twice a month. And the health department wants to assure people that the juice manufactured at that plant is not affected. Back to you.
Thank you, Lou. Even settled brutality allegations against Officer Blaine Leonard, and he's getting back pay for the 9 months he was off the job. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is here now with the details. Lou?
Officer Blaine Leonard filed a grievance to appeal his termination, and he was successful. He'll be back on the street now very soon.
We want to work together to...
Minneapolis Police Chief Janae Harto thought she was done with Officer Blaine Leonard, seen here spraying mace into a crowd, putting his hands on protesters, and knocking a camera out of a news photographer's hands. Harto fired him in January over an alleged use of force violation, saying he pushed a female suspect, called her the C word, and failed to report the use of force. Harto wrote in termination papers, "I've lost all confidence in Officer Leonard's ability to serve the citizens of Minneapolis due to his poor judgment and his lack of integrity." But this month, an arbitrator ruled that the city went too far. The arbitrator reduced the termination to a 40-hour unpaid suspension and ordered the city to pay Officer Leonard the salary he would have made while fired, about $40,000, according to the police union. Before getting his job back, Leonard also won a big legal battle.
Signify by saying aye. Aye.
Back in March, the City Council voted unanimously to remove indemnification in an unrelated brutality lawsuit, meaning if Leonard lost, he would have to pay the damages himself. But in the end, blaming legal issues, the city went ahead and paid the plaintiff $360,000 to settle for Leonard. The then ex-cop only had to pay $3,000. Blaine Leonard came out on top financially and got his job back. Chief Harteau today not sounding happy, writing in an email, quote, "I'm disappointed in the arbitrator's decision. These rulings hinder my ability as a police chief to create an effective culture of accountability within the department." And no word yet exactly what Leonard's role will be when he returns to the job. He was a patrol officer in the 5th Precinct before, and he's still appealing the city's decision to remove indemnification so that the city will have to pay his legal fees, too. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Lou. Dakota, Hennepin, Ramsey, and Washington.
KARE 11's Lou Raguse joins us live from City Hall in Minneapolis with details. Lou?
Yeah, this label is one that local law enforcement officials are happy to receive, and that's because it's actually a national program that nearly every state was already involved with. And this gives them a place at the table to cooperate and bust those larger drug trafficking rings. Now, these local officials, sheriffs, investigators, and prosecutors, they say that drug busts start with local users, local dealers, and if authorities are going to investigate all the way up the chain, they need to cooperate regionally, nationally, and even internationally to reach a kingpin. This designation, called the High Intensity Drug Trafficking, or HITA, puts them in the same club as other parts of the country working on these same problems.
It multiplies your resources. Without it actually giving us any money, it multiplies the resources because now all these agencies are working together.
We can only prosecute people if the cases are presented well. This is going to give the resources and this is going to give the dollars to be able to go after some of the kingpins and the big drug folks.
Now, it's not immediately clear how much money they'll receive from the federal government or if it'll lead to additional hires. But again, they say the most important thing is that this opens up the line of communication with other parts of the country to help them work on those larger scale drug busts. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Lou.
Are too many people abusing the honor system? Authorities are trying to find ways to cut down on people taking free rides on the Metro Light rail lines.
An audit by the Met Council showed the number of people riding but not paying used to be between 3 and almost 5% in 2014, but in 2016 you can see that number jumped to 8 to 10%. The biggest spike is late at night on the Blue Line. KARE 11's Lou Raguse has our story.
With no one watching as they board.
With it not being any security or whatever, like people just get on.
Some light rail passengers say the temptation to skip the pay station is too much.
If I'm trying to go somewhere and I ain't got and I don't feel like paying, I could hop on that.
Attitudes like that cost Metro Transit millions of dollars. According to an audit paid for by the Metropolitan Council, the number of free riders has doubled since 2014. At about $2 per ride, that would total $3.8 to $4.8 million in unpaid fares this year.
What the report doesn't tell us is why that is.
Metro Transit spokesman Howie Padilla says it's a balancing act between taking a loss of a few $1 million per year or investing much more to try to make everyone pay.
What we do know is that they are expensive. For instance, I think our colleagues over in Los Angeles spent $46 million in order to put up barriers, turnstiles, things in some of their stops.
Other similar-sized light rail systems reported fare evasion numbers to KARE 11 ranging from 3% in Dallas to 16% in Houston. All of those cities rely on the same system as Metro Transit. The question remains, what else can be done to lower the numbers? What would make you too afraid to try it?
Oh, if the law was on there, I ain't going on that.
According to the audit, by September, Metro Transit Police had made more ticket checks than in all of 2014. Increasing patrols further, again, they say, is a resource balancing act, all while some people say they consider the light rail a free ride. You think a lot of people have that attitude about it?
Probably. I mean, I know I do.
That was Lou Raguse reporting. To be fair, Metro Transit Police's internal number shows a much lower number of people riding for free, as low as 1% in September. But according to the audit, riders are probably extra careful when they see police. The Met Council will discuss the audit at a meeting tomorrow night.
Minnesota doctor trades in his job to treat children in Africa as a missionary.
While overseas helping others, there was one person he could not help. his own daughter. KARE 11's Lou Raguse is here with their story, all new at 6.
Julie and Randy, Dr. Stephen Swanson is a pediatric doctor, his wife a nurse. And the last 2 months have been perhaps the most difficult they've ever had in the medical field.
So I like seeing the lions and the cheetahs.
Despite living in Africa, far away from modern hospitals, Dr. Stephen Swanson's kids say they generally don't worry when they get sick.
My dad and my mom, they're both doctors and nurses, so they really know they can figure out what's going on and help us get better.
Dr. Swanson spent 7 years at the U of M and HCMC, where he was director of inpatient pediatrics. Then 2 years ago, the family moved to Tanzania as missionaries. He treats children, but with so few medical resources, he can't save them all.
In my first year there, I watched well over 100 children pass away under my clinical watch.
Then, 2 months ago, the life of Dr. Swanson's own daughter became threatened. 10-year-old India developed an ear infection that was rapidly spreading.
She didn't have any energy, and she normally has a lot of energy.
Symptoms started with headaches and led to paralysis on one side of her face. It was a rare intracranial infection, and Dr. Swanson knew he alone couldn't save her.
There was absolutely no way that you could treat this without surgery, and the surgical options in Tanzania are 0.
So they flew her to hospitals in Kenya, then South Africa, before finally Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, for a specialized life-saving surgery, which doctors performed Friday successfully. It was a frightening experience that Dr. Swanson says gives him even more perspective.
She's going to live through this, but if this had happened to any other child in the same country that you were living in, they probably would not have survived.
And India is already out of the hospital and getting therapy in Pittsburgh. Dr. Swanson and the 2 older kids are flying back to Tanzania tomorrow. India and her mom will rejoin them in 2 weeks. And guys, also worth noting that Dr. Swanson says that infection was not caused by anything that had to do with being in Africa. It could have happened right here in Minnesota as well.
Wow, what a family.
Yeah.
Glad she's okay. Thanks, Lou.
Thanks, Lou.
Tonight at 5, someone stole a woman's dogs that were tied up outside a small-town coffee shop.
KARE 11's Lou Raguse says more on what happened and why it isn't just the dog owner suffering a loss.
As fun and as cute as it is right now at Marianne Fogel's house,
And the little girl is Ruby.
there's something missing.
It's kind of like splitting up a family. So
Her 5 purebred Brittany pups, 8 weeks old and ready to move into their new homes, will spend their last week here without their mama and papa.
just really, it's hard to lose a companion, especially 2 at once.
Boo and Fern, a part of Marianne's family for 3 years, went with her every day as she got coffee in Princeton.
And I tied him right here on the bike post.
Something that feels completely safe to do in a small town. But Saturday at noon, after having her coffee and reading the paper, Marianne walked outside to find the dogs were gone.
I was in panic mode. I would like to know what kind of person takes a dog. I mean, how desperate do you have to be to, do that? I mean, you can get a dog nearly anywhere.
Someone apparently had untied each leash and stolen them.
I don't know. It's sad.
It's a popular and expensive breed. Puppies like this can sell for $700. And Marianne says they're missing out on an important part of their training.
Right now is their prime time to learn their social skills and learn, boundaries.
Police are investigating, but Marianne wants whoever took them to know if she gets them back, she's not going to press charges.
Because the goal here is to return the dogs home. That's why.
When the new owners pick up this litter, Marianne doesn't want her home to be quiet. She wants the rest of her family back.
And it really is kind of personal.
In Princeton, Lou Raguse, KARE 11 News.
Anyone with information on the stolen dogs should contact the Princeton Police Department. Still ahead.
Trail. Today he's in 2 of those states, in Pennsylvania, and soon just across the border in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where he's expected in just a couple hours. KARE 11's Lou Raguse is live there. I understand there was quite a line outside to get in, Lou.
Quite a line, thousands of people, Julie. Wisconsin hasn't gone Republican in a presidential election since 1988, but 3,000, 4,000 people here today hoping that this is the year that changes. I talked to many people outside who you could call enthusiastic Trump supporters. Also talked to people who you could call enthusiastically anti-Hillary Clinton. But I also spoke with several people who say they're still undecided at this point in the campaign. Many of them UW Eau Claire students who say that their vote could be swayed by what they hear tonight at this rally. Now we're expecting Donald Trump to take the stage at about 7 o'clock tonight. I'm told that this gymnasium holds about 3,500 people. They're still filing in right now. We'll see if all of them are able to make it inside, and we'll bring you much more coming up tonight at 10. Back to you.
All right. Thanks.
Just 1 week from Election Day, and the presidential race is getting tighter. Donald Trump with a slim 1-point lead over Hillary Clinton in a new ABC Washington Post poll, his first lead in that poll since May. But Trump still needs a string of wins in swing states where he currently trails.
Wisconsin is among them, and that's where Trump wrapped up a campaign stop in the last couple of hours. Our Lou Raguse was in Eau Claire for the rally and has our top story.
Ronald Reagan was the last Republican to win Wisconsin in a presidential election, but Donald Trump sees it as a swing state he can flip in order to defeat Hillary Clinton, and thousands of supporters here tonight are hopeful.
Lock her up! Lock her up! Woo!
The line outside the rally
USA!
to see the Republican nominee,
The best man alive, Donald Trump.
was much longer than what UW Eau Claire could fit inside.
There's a ton of passion, with what he has to say.
Donald's got a different message and speaks to the people.
With love for Trump,
Trump, well.
and animosity for Clinton.
Hillary for prison. This is what it means. I don't think it needs explaining.
And we are going to drain the swamp.
Trump's message to Wisconsinites and Minnesotans inside resonated. Staying away from controversial statements that have dogged him during the campaign, Trump got the biggest crowd reactions by sticking to the issues that outside voters said were important to them.
Obamacare is horrid with the rates going up and the insurance companies pulling out of Minneapolis.
Real change that begins with immediately repealing and replacing Obamacare, a total disaster.
Trump told voters he can win Wisconsin. He might need to in order to win the election.
We will make America great again.
There were a number of Clinton supporters and anti-Trump protesters outside before the rally. And although they chanted back and forth with the Trump supporters, both sides were pretty respectful and there were no major incidents. When Trump asked inside the rally here how many Minnesotans were in the crowd, about a third of the crowd cheered. In Eau Claire, Lou Raguse, KARE 11 News.
News North. Our Lou Raguse is live in that area with details. Lou?
Yeah, Julie, police believe someone is using rat poison in antifreeze-laced dog food to try to harm pets. One dog owner was struck twice. Now take a look first at this photo. This is dog food that one dog owner found underneath his deck in a spot where he doesn't normally feed his pets. The dog who ate this food died. When police tested it, they found it was laced with antifreeze. The same dog owner later on found rat poison in his yard as well. And there was a second dog owner whose pet was poisoned, and although that dog survived, it suffered severe organ damage.
We want to get the word out for other citizens so they can protect their dogs so we don't have this recurring, but it's a little concerning.
Police are trying to figure out if these owners were targeted or if someone is indiscriminately poisoning dogs. And for that reason, they need anyone in Hopkins who thinks their dog might be affected to call them and report it. And police say if you find poison or anything else suspicious in your yard, don't touch it. Just call them so that they can come and investigate. And if you have to bring your dog to the vet, make sure to get as much information as possible from the vet so that you can pass that information on to police. There already is a $1,000 reward for any information that leads to solving this case. Back to you.
All right.
11's Lou Raguse is live in Merriam Park in St. Paul, where we're told there's been a steady stream of voters all day long. Lou?
That's right, Randy. Well, voter turnout in Minnesota is awesome, has been for a long time. Here at Merriam Park Rec Center, they reached 80% voter turnout before this post-work rush started coming in. Now, earlier today, it was pretty evident that the early voting helped out on cutting down on the lines at polling places. They had 20% early voting here at this precinct. And with the exception of early morning voters, we didn't receive a lot of reports of long lines today. This election has caused a lot of anxiety for voters. Not everyone was happy with their choice of candidates, and a lot of people will be happy to move on tomorrow, even though they expect to be anxious tonight.
I think it's just very, very sad what we've come to. It's a dilemma. I mean, I've never not voted, so I have to vote, but I don't know who to vote for right now.
My husband and I are both actually voting for Trump.
Okay, and why?
Just his value, his beliefs in when it comes to religion and it comes to abortion, and his stance on war and things like that.
I voted Democratic, voted for Hillary, you know, all the way. So I definitely trust what she's gonna do.
Now back to those early ballots. Hennepin County has received 202,000 early ballots. Ramsey County has received 63,000. Those are both double the previous record set in 2008. And here the crowd is continuing to file in and out. No lines yet, though, this evening here at Merriam Park in St. Paul. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Lou. We're now...
KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live in St. Paul to kick off our team report. Lou?
Well, Julie, of course, conventional wisdom says that Hillary Clinton's probably favored to win Minnesota. After all, no Republican has won the state since Richard Nixon in 1972. Here at Merriam Park in St. Paul, voter turnout is already up to 88%. That's a huge number, and it includes 20% of these voters who voted early. Now, it's probably fair to say that a lot of people are voting for the candidate they like, and others are voting for, actually voting against the candidate they dislike. A lot of people here in Ramsey County and up in Anoka County tell me that they've never been more stressed out about an election. They'll be nervous tonight watching the results come in. They say voting was very important to them, and at the same time, they're happy to get past Election Day.
It's been crazy, absolutely crazy. I'm just glad that it's over. Well, almost over.
Well, my horse is not going to make it, Gary Johnson, so I had to vote for somebody other than the two.
I think my candidate is the lesser of two evils. And that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous. I'll be up watching. It'll be either way, it'll be a big change for the country, so.
Now, that early voting really helped cut down on the lines at many polling places across the state throughout the day. Again, polls close in Minnesota at 8 o'clock. Back to you.
All right, thanks to Lou. Joining us now for more. Expose a spike in military suicides in a powerful series called Charlie Foxtrot. Tonight you'll hear about one of those veterans, a Minnesotan who is no longer here to tell his story. Lou Ragoose reports.
At Eagle's Healing Nest in Sauk Center, veterans suffering from PTSD, veterans at risk of suicide, have a place to heal. Sherry Johnson only wishes she could have gotten her son to a place like this.
I would have had him up here in a heartbeat.
Before it was too late.
It's been 4 years, and it hurts just as much today as it did then.
Trevor Gould joined the Army after a loved one was killed in the Pentagon on September 11th. But while deployed in Mosul, Iraq, his mother knew he was having problems dealing with war.
Well, he called me because it was the first time he had to take somebody's life. He was literally crying and asking if God would forgive him. And what if the guy had family, a wife and kids and stuff? And what do you say to your child?
Then, back in the United States at Fort Hood in November 2009, Sherry says her son survived the mass shooting that killed 13 and wounded 30. Gould's medical records at that time indicate Army doctors were aware of possible mental health issues like depression. But a month later, the Army discharged Gould with other than honorable status.
He started doing pot and drinking, so they discharged him.
Discharge status is important because with other than honorable status, former service members aren't eligible for VA medical benefits, aren't able to get help for underlying issues, which in Trevor's case, his mom believes was post-traumatic stress disorder.
It's not fair what they're getting dealt. It is not fair.
Returning home, Sherry says Trevor was never the same, and in June 2012, he took his own life.
For me, that day when I found him, my whole world crashed. You know, I gave birth to my son and I closed my son's eyes for the last time. And that's hell. And I don't want other mothers to do this.
I've lost approximately 7 people just from my platoon that I served in Iraq with to suicide.
Jeremy Wolfsteller was an Army sergeant who recovered in the VA hospital after he was shot in the leg in combat. Today he works for the American Legion, helping vets who may have been kicked out of service for reasons stemming from PTSD fight for VA benefits.
And just because the military acted wrongly in the way they discharge you doesn't mean you're a bad person, you didn't serve honorably.
But fighting the Department of Defense for an upgraded discharge status can take years when Sherry knows help is needed right away.
When somebody's suicidal, they need that help right now, and if they're willing to reach out at that moment, you better grab them, or you're not going to have them anymore.
Do you think the Army could have done more for him?
I know they could have done more for him. And I know it ain't just him, you know.
Sherry Johnson knows. She's encouraged when she sees other vets seeking help, but would rather see a system that helps them first.
You know, I knew my son didn't want to die. He wanted to live his life, but the demons got him.
Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
There is a bill before Congress right now called the Fairness for Veterans Act. We wrap up a powerful series of stories called Charlie Foxtrot. It revealed a military policy some say is failing our veterans just when they need it most.
We showed you how tens of thousands of servicemen and women aren't eligible for VA benefits if they get a less than honorable discharge, meaning many never get the help they need to fight conditions like PTSD.
But tonight, a place veterans can go right here in Minnesota to find that help that otherwise might be denied. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose has the story.
Back to the drawing board. When I finally got here, it was easy to sober up. It was easy to sit there and find my way through this. It gives me hope, gives me a reason to live.
Finding a reason to live is a fight facing many of those who fought for our country. Eagle's Healing Nest and Sock Center is a sanctuary set up to help veterans find that reason.
They don't want to die. They just don't know what to do. They don't know what to do with the pain.
Melanie Butler opened Eagle's Healing Nest 4 years ago after her son, an Iraq War veteran suffering from PTSD, nearly tried to end his own life.
And he called me and said, "Mom, please take care of my babies and tell them that I love them." And oh, I knew what that phone call meant.
She felt lucky her son did not become one of the 6,400 veterans who die by suicide every year.
No, we don't follow their rules, and I won't put in his file.
But she was left frustrated by what she saw as too much red tape getting help for him through the VA.
So his information is... It makes me angry. They have all these resources, and all those resources are failing, and we struggle.
She knows others struggle too.
That'll keep you all busy.
So she invited them here.
So we were gifted with all of these. The veterans will make them as gifts for their kids and for other kids in the military and the community.
A community of veterans living in peace on a 124-acre campus on the edge of a small Minnesota town.
And this lady...
They're here to heal so that they may someday return to their own communities. And many of them are unable to find help anywhere else. Depending on their discharge status, tens of thousands of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans with PTSD aren't eligible for VA benefits to get the help they need. But here at Eagle's Healing Nest, they don't turn away anyone who's served.
This place, not once but twice, has helped me save my life and turn my life around.
Dan Klutenkamper was an Army sergeant who lived to fight for America with his platoon. After returning home with post-traumatic stress disorder, living became a struggle.
I had a massive disconnect from people as a whole.
So much that he came very close to killing himself.
I had several different ideas that I flirted with, but I could never, I couldn't think of a way to do it without ruining somebody else's day, if that made sense.
I lived in this building for 2 weeks.
Kurt Littig didn't just consider.
Just didn't want to burden anyone.
He attempted suicide.
So, kind of a dark time in my life.
Kurt says he found purpose afterward at the Nest, cooking for 70 other vets staying here.
Sink area, pots and pans.
When he felt healed enough to move out, the Nest got a new cook, another vet thankful for that same sense of purpose.
If it wasn't for this place, I would have been, well, I'd have been living under a bridge. Pretty much.
Thanks.
You're welcome, honey.
The Nest is completely free from government strains, fully paid for through grants and donations.
And we want to thank you for all the great work that you guys do here, and we hope to keep on doing this year after year.
Then there's Melanie, whom they call Ma.
You know, she's tougher than she looks.
She says it was worth it the day she opened the doors and her son told her this.
Thank you, Mom. It's exactly what we need. And it's true.
Lou Ragoose, KARE 11 News.
Local groups are planning several events throughout the next few days to remember Jamar Clark. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is in Minneapolis and joins us now with the latest. Hi, Lou.
Hi guys, we're outside the 4th precinct here where last year protesters spent 18 days protesting the death of Jamar Clark, and today they marched again to this site.
This has been a rough year. Has it been a rough year?
With a somber tone,
Almost a year since Jamar Clark was killed by Minneapolis police.
dozens of people gathered again for Jamar Clark and others killed in officer-involved shootings.
Just remember that this happens way too often.
And they marched.
No justice, no peace.
Like they did last year. Protests erupted after Clark was shot November 15th last year. At the time, police claimed Clark had assaulted his girlfriend, interfered with paramedics, then tried wrestling a gun away from the officer trying to arrest him. But several witnesses thought Clark was handcuffed when shot in the head. And many more felt he simply didn't deserve to die.
Jamar didn't have no weapon. He didn't have anything but himself, you know. And to me, the only person that was in danger was Jamar.
But state, federal, and internal affairs investigators disagreed.
The Hennepin County Attorney's Office has concluded that criminal charges are not warranted. There is insufficient evidence to pursue federal criminal civil rights charges.
I have concluded that these officers did not dictate the outcome of this incident.
According to investigators, Clark was never handcuffed, and DNA shows he grabbed the officer's gun.
Jamar!
But a year later, they're still protesting, asking everyone to remember and hope for change.
And the only thing that we can do is just keep fighting, just like we've been doing, you know, and sooner or later, you know, something will come.
Shut it down!
Now, this wasn't the largest rally we've covered, not by a long shot. There were about 80 people out here, many of whom have been protesting at these type of events from the very beginning. And on Tuesday, which is the one-year anniversary of the shooting, there'll be a candlelight vigil just down the street here on Plymouth Avenue near James. That's the spot where Jamar Clark was killed. Guys.
Lou, thank you very much.
3 more Somali Minnesotans were sentenced today for supporting the Islamic State in Syria, with one stating, quote, "Yes, I am a terrorist, Your Honor." KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live with more on what happened in federal court today. Lou?
That was a very powerful exchange, Julie, and just like it inside the courtroom today. Judge Michael Davis very openly wanted to impress upon the public and the Somali supporters inside the courtroom just how serious these crimes were. Most dramatically, at one point, he raised his voice and said there is a cell here in Minneapolis, comparing it to terrorist cells in Paris and Brussels. Now, before he handed down the sentences for the first 2 young men today, Judge Davis played ISIL recruitment videos for the entire courtroom. They were very graphic, very gruesome. The judge clearly wasn't impressed with anyone who minimizes what these men tried to do. He made all 3 men today say out loud that they wanted to go to Syria and kill people in the name of Allah. He made the first 2 defendants admit they are terrorists. He gave the first defendant, Hazma Ahmed, 15 years in prison, saying Ahmed's tweets were the most violent communication that they've seen in this case. Now, the second defendant, Hanad Mousse, received 10 years in prison, and the third, Adnan Farah, also received a 10-year sentence. Farah's attorney spoke to reporters afterward.
He'll come out of prison with enough time for life. To that extent, I am grateful with the judge.
Now, these 3 sentences yesterday, most likely because although these defendants pleaded guilty, they did not help the prosecution. And the judge directly asked them, why didn't they? They said they were afraid they would lose their community's support if they did. The remaining 3 defendants will be sentenced tomorrow. Back to you.
Wow, what a day in court. Thank you, Lou. Some dramatic moments in court today where the final 3 of 9 men learned their fate for their role in a terrorism conspiracy.
The men were the last 3 of 9 to be sentenced in this case, and their punishments the harshest of all. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose was in the courtroom. He joins us live with the details. Lou?
Today, after the first 2 of 3 defendants received their sentence while they're being escorted out of the courtroom, they raised an index finger to the sky, and the judge then called everyone back into the courtroom because prosecutors say that is a sign that ISIL fighters use when they're posing for videos and photos and ISIL propaganda. And prosecutors say that could be a sign of a lack of remorse. Prior to that, the defendants all told Judge Michael Davis that they are remorseful. They once again today, Judge Davis asked tough questions. He admitted he was being harsh, in his words, because he has to incapacitate this jihadi cell. He sentenced Gould Omar to 35 years in prison, Abdurrahman Daoud to 30 years in prison, and Mohammed Farah also to 30 years behind bars. Again today, Judge Davis played graphic ISIL propaganda videos in court to show everyone the disturbing acts these men were hoping to do by traveling to Syria and joining ISIL. And Judge Davis was particularly irritated when Farah refused to admit that he is a terrorist. Here's what Farah's attorney said about that exchange.
I think the answer he gave was a truthful answer. I think he described his actions as being terroristic. He did things that terrorists do. He may have been a terrorist at some point, and he still may be one right now. I know he doesn't believe he is.
Now, Judge Davis made great attempts to show supporters of these defendants within Minneapolis' Somali American community how serious these crimes were. But afterwards, dozens of protesters outside the federal courthouse held signs and chanted to release their boys, accusing the FBI of entrapping them. Now, one of the most telling things that the judge said today in explaining these long sentences, he said that he traveled the world consulting with experts trying to figure out what can be done with people involved with jihadist behavior. And Judge Davis said that nothing in the criminal justice system comes close to rehabilitating someone who has jihadist views. Back to you.
All right. In other news today, the last 3 of the 9 Somali Minnesotans convicted of plotting to support ISIL received their sentences today.
And the judge did not hold back, giving them the harshest prison sentences of all. Here are the 3 who appeared in federal court today. Federal prosecutors say Mohammed Farah and Abdirahman Daoud each flung an ISIL sign to supporters after receiving their 30-year sentences. KARE 11's Lou Ragus was in the courtroom and joins us live from Minneapolis. Another extraordinary day in federal court. Lou?
Yeah, Julie, right after those gestures were made, the prosecutor made sure the judge brought everyone back into the courtroom to talk about it. He said it was important to put it onto the record because those gestures are prominent in ISIL propaganda, and he wanted it on the record in case these guys end up appealing their sentences. Now, these were the 3 guys that pleaded not guilty and took their case all the way to trial before a jury finally found them guilty. The harshest sentence today was 35 years in prison, and that went to Gould Omar, who sobbed throughout his hearing and brought out the most emotion among his supporters in court. But prosecutors say Omar had blood on his hands, and the judge called him the most influential defendant. Judge Davis gave the other 2 men 30 years in prison, Abdirahman Daoud and Mohammed Farah, who will now join his brother, who was sentenced yesterday in prison. Judge Davis even made Farah admit that his parents knew what he was up to.
I think it's safe to say we're disappointed. It wasn't a life sentence. That's good, I guess. But beyond that, I was hoping for something close to what his brother received, which was 10 years. So I'm a little disappointed, and I know he is.
And protesters afterward gathered outside the federal courthouse, claiming the FBI entrapped these young men. And on that note, Judge Davis expressed frustration that these young men are characterized as misguided victims. He said, quote, "The court is thankful there was a trial so that all the evidence could come out. It's on the record, and there's no denying it." So that ends the chapter here of this ISIL trial here in Minneapolis. Back to you.
Night with more. Lou?
Yeah, when you consider everything that happened here today, it's amazing no one was killed. Both the suspect who was shot here in Anoka and that man who was shot up at the convenience store are both expected to survive. No innocent drivers were hurt. And here in Anoka, it is still an active crime scene. In fact, right now, they're just finally taking away that suspect's vehicle back there on Highway 10. After the chase came to an end on Highway 10, it turned into a foot chase, and it ended with a Coon Rapids officer shooting the man after he hopped a fence into someone's backyard. Police say they thought he had a gun in his hand. We have no confirmation yet whether it was indeed a gun. And prior to that, the chase, it wasn't just 100 miles per hour. Police say the suspect's Audi sports car was going 130, faster than the squad cars could even keep up with. About 30 different squad cars were involved with the chase, and police say he was trying to ram squad cars, even swerved at officers who were out of their cars trying to lay down spikes to stop him. And finally, the Coon Rapids officer was able to ram into the vehicle and stop it, and that's when the suspect got out and ran.
It ended when an officer fired a shot at the suspect as the suspect was attempting to escape, and the officers believed he had something in his hand they thought was a gun.
And the chase began about 20 miles away after a man in a convenience store called 911 to report that he had been shot. And that's where our Zach Lashway continues our coverage now. Zach?
Lou, we begin with a police shooting in the North Metro. At this hour, authorities are investigating 2 separate scenes. One, the site of a shooting that sparked a police chase. The other, where the chase ended with a suspect shot. It all began in East Bethel just after noon and ended about 20 miles away in Anoka.
We have live continuing team coverage with crews at both scenes. We're going to begin with Lou Ragoose in Anoka. Lou?
Yeah, this is where it ended. I'm just off of Highway 10. That's right where police were finally able to force the speeding Audi off the road. And that's when it turned into a brief foot chase. And traffic cameras actually captured that foot chase as the suspect hopped over a chain link fence right into someone's backyard. Police chasing after him. Police then fired at him, thinking that they saw a gun in his hand. We haven't confirmed yet whether he actually had a gun. Now back to that chase. It spanned 20 miles, involved 30 squad cars, and hit speeds going 130 miles per hour. That's faster than police could even keep up with. No officers were hurt though, and we talked to a woman here in Anoka who says she witnessed that police shooting the suspect.
I just seen him running. I didn't see him do anything but run, and then I seen him fall to the ground back there.
He was swerving at squad cars. He was swerving towards officers out of their squad cars, trying to deploy stop sticks, and was, endangering not only the officers but the general public.
Both men who were shot are expected to survive. That includes the suspect here in Anoka and the man who was shot up in East Bethel. No charges have been announced yet, although police say they're investigating that first shooting as an attempted murder, and state investigators are looking into this officer-involved shooting here. Back to you.
Wow, thank you, Lou.
George Shirel got that apology. KARE 11's Lou Ragoose is live with that part of the story tonight. Lou?
Yeah, he got the apology, but he actually wasn't in court to listen to it, walking out before Danny Heinrich began to speak to the court. Jared Shirel, of course, we've been talking to for years now, and it turns out he was the one person that was right all along, that the same person who kidnapped and sexually assaulted him also took Jacob Wetterling. Giving the first victim impact statement in court today, Jared said he's grateful for the people who've come into his life, supporting him and giving him strength to maintain a normal life. Jared helped investigators draw that sketch that we now see closely resembled Heinrich. And the DNA evidence in Jared's case is what finally helped investigators catch Heinrich. As he finished, Jared told Heinrich that the words he spoke to him in 1989 haunted him for years, and Jared just didn't want to hear anything else Heinrich wishes to say, so he walked out of court when Heinrich stood up.
I'm grateful for the level of support and encouragement that I've received along the way. This is another step towards closure. It's a traumatic event that defines your life in a lot of ways, and we can all learn from the lessons that we heard today from the Wetterling family and the excellent words that they've shared with all of us as well.
And Heinrich, as Caroline mentioned, addressed Jared in his statement apologizing for the emotional and psychological trauma caused to him and other victims. We didn't get clarification of what he meant by other victims in that statement, though.
Hey, Lou, can you talk about his demeanor in court today, Heinrich's?
Well, as Heinrich was listening to the victim impact statements, it did appear that he was wiping away tears, and his attorney said that he was crying during the victim impact statements. As for how you interpret that and what he was thinking, that's really hard to say.
All right, and as far as possibly being released when he's 70 years old, 20 years from now, that's highly unlikely he'll go into the general population, correct?
Yeah, Minnesota has the Minnesota Sex Offender Program, and he would have to serve 17 years of that 20-year sentence. If the Sex Offender Program exists in 17 years the same way that it does today, it's hard to imagine that he wouldn't be committed to that Sex Offender Program civilly.
Right.
Thank you so much, Lou.
All right.
I asked for their privacy after the hearing, but Jared Shirel did speak, and my colleague Lou Ragoose spoke with him.
And of course, Jared Shirel, one of the keys to actually leading to Danny Heinrich eventually being caught, he was kidnapped and sexually assaulted by Danny Heinrich months before Jacob Wetterling, and his description of Heinrich and what he did was very similar to what Trevor Wetterling and Aaron Larson also described. The investigation really accelerated the last couple of years when Jared started publicly speaking again, still believing that the same man who assaulted him also took Jacob. The DNA Heinrich left behind in Jared's clothing was the proof that finally directed investigators to Heinrich once again. In his public comments recently, Jared has been keeping it positive, and that's what he did today again as he read his victim impact statement. And to Heinrich, Jared said after being haunted by Heinrich's words to him that night in 1989, he doesn't want to hear him speak again. So Jared walked out of court when it was Heinrich's turn. Jared restated to cameras after the hearing that today is another step toward closure, and the Wetterlings, although they didn't speak to reporters, their attorney said this.
They would like to just have some time now to heal, and as Patty said, they're going to have the most joyous Thanksgiving they've had in a long time.
And they certainly deserve it. Again, Danny Heinrich apologizing directly to the Wetterling parents today and directly to Jared Shirel, although he wasn't in the courtroom to hear it. Guys, back to you.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks,
Lou.
Lou.